right, boys and girls, welcome back to another edition of The Big Ben Show. I'm your host, Ben Domenech. Follow me on X at BDomenech. You can subscribe to my newsletter, The Transom, at thetransom.com, and to The Spectator at thespectator.com. And today I'm coming to you as the bearer of terrible, horrible, very bad news. Cut 6.
CBS has canceled Stephen Colbert's Late Show. I am literally, I am in shock. I am in shock.
Wow.
Like I'm like having, I was like, I actually can't not say something right now. Cause like there's a conversation happening in the chat right now about it being like, oh my God.
This just makes it look completely connected with the 60 Minutes settlement.
Obviously, President Trump has made no secret of his hatred of being mocked, specifically the jokes that people like Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel make at his expense.
There is not a snowball's chance in hell. There is not politics behind this. I simply don't believe it.
This has not been a great week for free speech and speaking truth to power.
This is textbook authoritarian rule.
Let's talk about those jokes, though. Those jokes that Jake Tapper mentioned. I mean, they obviously are written by some of the best comedy minds, the best, and brightest that work in that field, that have written for these classic shows over the years. People who've come up with some of the best, and most incredible humor for, whether it stretches back to Johnny Carson or whether it stretches back to, the kind of bits that we would see in the old days on the Colbert Report or on the Daily Show. What are those quality joke writers up to today? Cut 9.
On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings."
How dare you, sir? Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go f yourself.
And then there was Jon Stewart, cut 11.
Go f yourself! Go f yourself! Go f yourself!
I mean, frankly, I think that they just owe a debt to the OG himself, Rahm Emanuel, cut 5.
Megan, as you probably know, there's a lot of stories about Dems have to now start swearing to look like they're normal or something like that. I was 30 years ahead of my time. I'm like a good bottle of wine.
Look, this is the truth. They don't have anything. They don't have anything other than that TDS-based rage to motivate these shows. And the big reason why Colbert got canceled wasn't about some free speech thing. It's about the fact that CBS, and as part of this Paramount deal, has been hemorrhaging cash. They have a staff of more than 200 people who worked on Stephen Colbert's Late Show. They were losing the network reportedly $40 million a year. That's an insane figure. You can't maintain that type of staff level and have the low quality type of comedy imitation that really is just fan service for MSNBC addicts that goes on air every night. You also have someone who can no longer, because he's so political, even be the face of the network the way that someone like, say, Jimmy Fallon is for NBC. And look, as someone who loves late night and who, has always thought of it as being, the kind of thing that was very interesting and, spoke to a lot of American values at the time. I go back and watch old clips even of Conan O'Brien's show, which I grew up watching all the time and have fondness and nostalgia for it. The old kind of guest routines where Norm Macdonald would come on the show and have conversations. That stuff was funny. This isn't funny. It's not meant to even be funny. It's meant to be the equivalent of a rage tweet against Donald Trump that lives out in human form in front of us every night. Now, I want to tell you a personal story about this. I went to visit the Late Show once, not as a guest on air, but just as a guest who was in the crowd. As it happened, sort of weirdly, it was the evening where Stephen Colbert held up a National Review cover that I had contributed to. And then the thing that was so interesting about the show as it played out was this was a moment when Colbert was really struggling to find his footing. He was falling behind in ratings. He hadn't really connected with audiences. There were rumors that he was going to be canceled. And at one point in the show, when they had to redo a bit repeatedly, Colbert, sitting alone by himself at his desk, just laid his head down on the desk in a kind of defeated manner. And I felt like at the time, this is a guy who has some serious issues going on. And I don't know if this is speaking to something that's more fundamental about his character, but he just seemed very, very depressed and disappointed. This is a conversation he had around the same time with Jerry Seinfeld. Cut 12.
Existing is a complete, what a trial.
One of my favorite Richard Pryor lines is a bit about racism. He says, you know, forget about racism. It's hard enough just being a person.
Do you know the band Neutral Milk Hotel?
Is that an antacid?
He's got a song, and one of the lines is, and someday we will die and our ashes will fly from the airplane over the sea. And when we meet on a cloud, I'll be laughing out loud. I'll be laughing with everyone I see. Can't believe how strange it is to be anything at all. I really love that idea, how strange it is to be... Okay, Jerry.
Too much.
Too much. Seinfeld can't help but laugh at this guy for being so emo and kind of wrapped up in his feelings, depressed about what's going on. And this is just the opposite of the attitude that made Stephen Colbert a success in the first place. I remember the heyday of the Colbert Report. I was sitting next to Stephen Colbert when he first came and met with the gathering of GOP press flacks and comms directors on Capitol Hill, making the case that their members should come on his show, that he would be fair to them, that he would joke with them, but that they would be effectively in on the joke. That's a completely different approach than the one he has today. And I just want to remind you how good the Colbert Report could be in its heyday. Cut 13.
And here to perform the actual press release, verbatim. Please welcome Tony and Emmy-winning actor, Sir John Lithgow.
Then the sheep, not wanting to be dropped from the establishment's cocktail party invite list, unloaded their entire clip, firing without taking aim, their distortions and falsehoods. Now they are left exposed by their bylines and handles. But surely they had killed him off. This is the way it always worked. A lesser person could not have survived the first few minutes of the onslaught. But out of the billowing smoke and dust of tweets and trivia emerged Gingrich.
Look, I mean, come on, that's great. I love that. And guess what? The other thing is, Newt Gingrich loved that. He thought it was hilarious. Okay, it's the kind of thing that where you understand what the joke is and you can take aim at both sides. You can gore the oxes of both sides. But that's something that Colbert didn't do. My friend John Podhoretz pointed out consistently that this is something that he just totally lacked when it came to this type of comedy. And that's what ended up putting him in this position where he was so expensive and so burdensome for the network and such a drag in terms of people not wanting to tune in from the other side, that they're actually canceling the entire show, not just him. And frankly, I think that should be a lesson to all of these people, not a lesson about the death of late night, which I still think has a place within American social fabric and within our community discussions, but actually a lesson about how a good comic who becomes too political can ultimately lose sight of what just makes people laugh. And Colbert has been making me laugh for a very long time. Cut 14.
Birdman, I need you to notarize this.
Sure. What is it?
Nothing special. Some dental records, a pay stub or two. Oh, and don't forget that one.
Congressional Medal of Honor?
When I die, I'll go to heaven, because I've spent my time in hell. Grenada, 83.
Now you can say that about CBS. I'm Ben Domenech. You're listening to The Big Ben Show. We'll be back with more with Mary Catherine Ham and Stephen Kent right after this.
What were your thoughts?
Look, I was opposed to the debate just because I didn't know why we were
rushing into it.
I didn't understand why we were rushing into a debate with somebody who had just been convicted on 34 felony counts.
Yes.
And why we weren't just going to wait to see how this played out.
And we're back on the Big Ben Show. I'm joined today by Mary Katharine Ham. You can follow her on X at MKHammer. Mary Katharine, I know that you may not have had the time to consume the full 3+ hours. I mean, this was, talk about the Snyder Cut, you know, like this is the extended Hunter Biden, everything under the sun.
I will be consuming it. It's actually it's my gym playlist.
I have gone through only half of it, so I will confess if I could have missed some things, but
oh, I'm sure there's much to commend it outside of the clips. Yes.
What was your initial reaction to seeing some of these clips that started coming out from this Hunter Biden interview?
My initial reaction is that it cracks me up that every time the Democratic Party sort of maybe gets an inch closer to coalescing and figuring out what the heck they're going to do, a Biden pops up. And it was bad enough to have Joe Biden talking to the New York Times, and that was like a 10-minute rained off interview. And then it's like, oh no, we can go bigger.
Oh yes.
Hunter Biden can do 3 hours with a YouTuber. That's what we're going to do. So good luck, guys.
Well, he was offering his criticism. It was interesting because he was on the one hand saying, I was never in the White House and that broke my heart and I really wasn't that important. And then it's like, he knows beat by beat every single element and decision that was made here. And he has thoughts on all of them. I mean, what are your thoughts on Hunter Biden as a political analyst?
Keep talking, man. No, I actually don't think he's incorrect about some of his points, but he is incorrect about his dad, who was clearly incapable of doing this, and he wants to pretend like that's not the case. He's right about the debate. They shouldn't have rushed into that. They should have seen how it played out, and perhaps they could have gotten away with something less humiliating that wouldn't happen on stage, but it did spare us from the, non-Copus executive.
He blamed the debate on Ambien and him flying around the world, except leaving out the fact that he had gone to Camp David to prepare for several days in advance of this. So I don't know why that is what he sought to blame. He also had opinions on an enormous range of subjects, perhaps none more than what is apparently his favorite thing in the world.
Free, you can go to your neighborhood convenience store and just get. Anyway, I don't want to tell people how to make crack cocaine, but it literally is a mayonnaise jar of cocaine and baking soda. I'm saying I don't want to have the experience of some euphoric recall. That's how powerful crack cocaine is. Does crack cocaine make you act any differently? No. Is it safer than alcohol? Probably. People think of crack as being dirty. It's the exact opposite. When you make crack, what you're doing is you're burning off all the impurities so that it combines with the sodium bicarbonate, which makes it smokable. That's all.
That's all. So,
you know what it is? You know what it is, Ben? It's nothing more than just a father and son stutter. That's all that's happening here. He just inherited it. He's not just talking about freebasing for fun.
I don't know about you, but I've never had to go buy alcohol in like a park surrounded by people who are ODing.
That is wild.
I mean,
he's like, to be sure, I don't want to instruct you on how to make crack cocaine, but here is how to make crack cocaine and why it's healthy.
Yes, it's actually burning off the impurities. It's the way he talks about it, the passion that he brings to it.
Yeah.
And I saw more than one person make this joke online, comparing it to the way that John Gruden talks about quarterbacks. Okay, it's just he is so passionate about it, locked in on it. Spider 2Y banana. So look, this is the thing that I think is fascinating about this. At this point, your original point, you do have the Democratic Party that's trying to find its footing, dealing with the problems of their far left, dealing with the socialist that's rising up in New York, dealing with all of these different issues with their next generation of far left leaders. And here comes Hunter Biden back into the stage. And I'll tell you one thing, though. He does bring that masculine energy.
Oh my gosh. I think Smug tweeted, they've found their Joe Rogan.
Yes, they have. They have actually. No, this is the thing. Hunter's podcast, I would absolutely subscribe to it.
100%.
Oh yeah.
I hate
and not
to
just
reward
for the
that behavior,
tips.
and yet I would.
The thing that is fascinating to me though about it too is the level of resentment hasn't diminished.
Right.
Like even with the passage of time, even with the fact that his father's since been sadly diagnosed with serious health problems, which would probably, if he had been reelected, be causing him to leave right now, and instead, without any perspective, I feel like Hunter is coming in here and just rolling into the club with I've got thoughts and I'm ready to share them. And it's not the kind of thing the Democratic Party needs right now.
No, the great thing is that the Bidens desperately want to relitigate the past, and I would love them to relitigate the past, because I don't think we've litigated it at all, because it was not revealed what his condition was while he was in office. And I think Hunter Biden, to put it mildly, is not a careful man, and so we will hear things from him that he shouldn't be saying about how things were in the White House. And I am in favor of that. There is this interesting entitlement, and I'm going to relate it to Colbert as well. This entitlement that how dare we be pushed off the stage? We deserve to be here in perpetuity and supported by the American people. No, you were there for so long as a gift. You were there for too long. You were given too many passes, particularly Hunter Biden, who was never elected by anyone and just keeps getting the largesse of the position bestowed upon him.
You bring up the Colbert situation, and I think that there's another element here that is a fair comparison, which is that it's also people who are very mid in terms of their accomplishments.
Yes.
You know, like,
are you telling me he wasn't an international energy expert? Because I was led to believe that that's why he was hired.
When he was rattling off, I don't know if you saw him rattle off his resume of like how long, you know, I've been all over the world. I've helped all these different, you know, conflicts. I've been a professor at Georgetown for so long, et cetera. And it's like, okay, you know, really, you're expecting us to believe that you just got all that if your name is Hunter Smith.
Right.
You know, it's just
he thinks he's a winner.
Yes,
you're not a winner.
No,
sir.
And it's that to me is like, it's very Jimmy Kimmel. It's very like, you think you would be here if you didn't become buddies with Adam Carolla at just the right time and have everyone forget about your blackface at just the right time.
It's an important part of the story. Yes.
So the other element of this that I'm curious about, though, is what is the fallout from this? Is there an actual Democratic reaction to this? Because we've seen the reaction from some of the people he's criticized, including the Pod Bros, including a lot of other people who, you know, he singled out for criticism. Anita Dunn, you know, he says, and goes after. What is your takeaway in terms of any actual consequences of this in terms of Democratic fallout or backlash?
Well, first, I love the idea of Hunter Biden expressly coming out against money grabs and white middle-aged dudes who are closely related to the president getting paid millions of dollars to be closely related to the president. Oh, big principled stand, Hunter. I don't know that there are going to be consequences. I think these people are loose cannons and they don't know how to shut them up. If they could have shut them up, they would have done so by now. If they could have bought them off, they would have done so by now.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right, and I mean, maybe that's the dangerous thing now, you know, that he can't be as easily bought off. I mean, you know, so yeah. Your overall takeaway about where things stand at the moment. We're 6 months into the Trump term. Things seem, from their perspective, from the perspective of the White House, to be going swimmingly. They like everything that they see. They're, you know, talking about his great poll numbers among Republicans. They're talking about, you know, all this other stuff, and they're doing it, you know, in the context where mostly the backlash to him in the last couple of weeks has been about Epstein-related issues and things like that, as opposed to kitchen table issues and things where they feel, you know, very positive about the stock market and everything else that's played out with the tariff situation.
Yeah, I think he's had a pretty astounding 6 months. I mean, if you told me that they were going to extend these tax rates with the big beautiful bill 6 months before you had to extend the tax rates and they went off the cliff, I would not have believed you.
Yeah.
So I think the ability to get that kind of thing done is pretty stunning. Obviously, things like the Doge cuts, which I wish were bigger in the rescissions package, a little disappointing. But you also, on the other hand, you have this sort of huge, like, emotional victory of PBS and NPR finally getting a little cut. Now, is this illusory? Does it come back? I don't know. Yeah. But these are things, the Planned Parenthood thing, these are things that people have promised forever.
Yes, Republicans have been saying they've been doing it our entire lives.
Hugely in favor of, and here they're actually happening. So there's a lot to be said for it. I think there are threats on the horizon. Like, none of the bad things, such that they are, that are happening, any getting out over their skis or overplaying their hand by the Trump administration, is redounding to the benefit of Democrats, right? So that's good. But I think there are threats in uncertainty from the tariff discussion. I think it's just a bad idea to take on 165 trade deals at one time while you're trying to be the president and doing a bunch of other things like bombing Iran, which is another unexpected victory. I think it can lead to uncertainty. It can lead to economic stagnation that you don't want when you could be growing at huge rates, which would help your reelection or your prospects in 2026. I think there's a problem with Medicaid reform letting Democrats get too far ahead on the everyone will die messaging, which if you hit it hard enough for long enough, too many people will believe.
They will believe it.
If you are not offering, hey, we expanded HSAs. We made these things possible inside this bill for your health care to look better. We preserved Medicaid for people who actually need it instead of the able-bodied people who refuse to go out and do volunteer work or look for a job who the Democrats want to have it, right? If you don't make those arguments, if you don't make the argument for the tax rates, you will get swamped by the other side's messaging.
Talk to me about the risk associated, because it's been a topic on some of the other networks and in other writing, the risk associated with the immigration policies currently. Right. Obviously, among Republicans and among a lot of the newer independent voters who got brought into the coalition, the approach is generally quite popular. However, you've also seen the White House kind of trying to massage its messaging around this and suggest, we're not sending these farm workers who have work visas and things like that. We're not grabbing them up and sending them home. We're not sending home people who are here legally, who are standing outside of a Home Depot, that kind of thing. Do you think that they are concerned that there could be a natural backlash or fallout from the policies that they've had, even if they are currently quite popular?
Yes, I do think they're concerned about that. I think they should be concerned about that. I'm wary on this issue because I went from a total immigration squish to a total immigration hawk.
Yep.
So I'm not sure where I am in relation to
Well,
the
I think
American
a lot
people.
of people were with you on that in the sense of they felt one way under Barack Obama, and then 4 years of Joe Biden and his border policies shifted. I think they shifted a ton of people right. So
yes,
I don't think
so they shifted people right, but how much tolerance do people have for the storyline that, oh no, people who I wouldn't otherwise be worried about are being picked up and sent home, and it's cruel. There might be some backlash to that, and I think they're right to worry about it. A weird thing about this administration is that it almost won too fast on the border because it was so quick and seemingly so simple that it almost didn't resonate as the victory that it should have. And maybe like had that taken a few more months, you would have had more less of the potential backlash from that.
Well, I mean, the truth is that poor Bill Melugin, actually, congratulations to Bill Melugin. You don't have to stand at Eagle Pass anymore.
Exactly.
But one of the things that I think you're correct about that is sometimes when you're moving so quickly, it doesn't allow for the appreciation of things that you're actually accomplishing.
Correct.
And how does that change? Because Trump clearly is not going to stop, given just his speed doesn't seem like it's going back anymore.
No, and I think part of it is people getting in town halls and on the road during the campaign and talking about how the border has 17 people at it now instead of 10,000 a day. I think that is important. I think being careful about how you're dealing with legal residents who might be bad folks, who you might need to get out of the country, and dealing with that in a very precise legal way would be a smarter way than some of the things the administration has done. But I think most Americans, if you put the case to them about a Mahmoud Khalil who was head of an organization that backs armed resistance by Hamas and says they want to eradicate the West, they'll be like, maybe he shouldn't be a guest here. Perhaps we should have a way of adjudicating that.
On the other side, are you surprised? I mean, I guess we shouldn't be at this point, that folks seem to largely be falling in line behind Zohran Mamdani and the idea of him being an actual serious candidate for the mayoralty of New York City. I mean, because he's said so many things that, you would think Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer would find unacceptable. And yet they basically are going quiet on it or offering words of support.
I think one of the reasons they're doing that is because he has Obama energy. They're feeling some nostalgia for a sort of handsome guy who can be charming on camera. And I would say to anyone who is an ideologue or a partisan who wants to win, that anyone who can talk is a threat. And that guy can talk. By the way, can I just point out that he's in Uganda for 15 days in the middle of this campaign?
What is that about? That's a long time.
That is a long time to be off the trail. I think
that's not a weekend trip to see family.
Maybe he's trying to get me to say it's weird so he can be like, see, they hate me because I'm different.
They hate me.
No, you should just be working on the campaign trail. So I am a little surprised that his ideas, people are coalescing around, but I don't think it's the ideas. I think it's him. And it's the fact that Cuomo's detestable. Everyone in the race has such an ego that they're not going to figure it out that someone should be the head competitor. And I don't want New York to get what's coming to them. I don't want them to have to deal with Zohran. By the way, I listened to Omar Fatah, the Minneapolis mayor, Democratic Socialist, who was endorsed by the Democratic Party, going to an election in November. And I regret to inform you that he also sounds sort of normal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
No, when progressives start to sound normal, when the socialists start to sound normal, that's when you
well,
know
he's better at playing the normie, populist normie, than people in the past have been.
Yes, than Hunter Biden. Even
bring on the podcast.
You know, one last sort of subject for you, and I know that you and I had the experience of sitting down at an event in Baltimore a couple of months back, where we got to see Mike Rowe in action, and he'll be a guest on the podcast soon enough. We were both kind of blown away by his ability to talk. What do you think about the prospects of the kind of moving past Trump era for the right in terms of the different people that they're going to turn to? Obviously, people assume that J.D. Vance is in the catbird seat. Right. They look at some of the performing, sort of Xers and elder millennials that are coming up, and they see some talent there. Who do you view as being the kind of rising potential star? And is it someone who is, potentially outside politics, just as Donald Trump was at the time that he ran for president?
I don't think Roe's ever going to sully himself by becoming part of this ecosystem. And I think that's part of what makes him powerful. But anyone who wants to be a rising star should watch him because he is if the admonition just be normal and the admonition don't hate men was a person.
Yes.
But a person with immense talent for communicating very deep things in sort of everyman style. He's your guy. Yeah. Like, just somehow figure out how to replicate that or copy that, and it will be probably not as good as his. But, you can do your best. That's why I think that, like, a J.D. Vance is a frontrunner, because that man can talk. And when Trump is off the stage, because a lot of MAGA is whatever Trump says, someone who can talk is going to have to be the person who can bring together these coalitions again under some kind of banner of what they believe. Now, if that banner ends up being sort of like utilitarian, we win elections and these guys are insane, it may work again. But I do think philosophically, as you and I have been on this trip forever as sort of movement conservatives who've gotten washed along in this increasingly populist movement, with good reason, because the movement conservatives were not addressing things that people wanted addressed. I don't know how we philosophically coalesce in the future in the same way that we have in the past, because Trump's pretty much in charge of that.
Well, and we're a year and a half basically from this being the immediate question in terms of this coming out of the upcoming midterms. You can follow Mary Katharine Ham on Twitter at MKHammer. You have so many different projects. Which podcast do you want to recommend that people tune in for?
I am doing Normally with Carol Markowitz and Getting Hammered, which is a little bit on a summer hiatus at the moment, but you can check in for our episodes there where we sometimes literally get hammered and have a summer beer taste test on air, and those are good times.
Oh my gosh, I need to add that to this show. Thanks so much, Mary Katharine Ham, for taking the time to join the Big Ben Show.
Thanks for having me.
And we are back on the Big Ben Show. Happy to be joined today on this episode by Stephen Kent, who you can follow on Twitter at Stephen Kent X. He is the founder of Geeky Stoics, and he is media relations at the Consumer Choice Center. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today, Stephen.
Great to be here, Ben.
So at Geeky Stoics, if people who haven't heard you before on my podcasts are unfamiliar, you weigh into all different manner of nerdy topics and things like that from a perspective that looks at the philosophical underpinnings of them, history, et cetera, and things like that. And I wanted to bring you in here to have a conversation with you following on the conversations that have been happening around the latest Superman reboot that has been put out by DC and Warner Brothers, which has done pretty well at the box office and is basically getting critical praise as something that kind of resets the franchise. It's viewed as a very important tentpole from director James Gunn for the whole DC universe and everything coming out of it. I know you just saw the film at my behest because I wanted to talk to you about it, so I appreciate you taking the time. What did you think of it?
Okay, so I want to start with saying that I listened to your review of the film. I thought it was fantastic and poetic, and I think there's a lot to what you say about Superman and that you don't recognize this Clark Kent and this version of this story. I am not a deep Superman fan, so I'm not going to come at this from a place of great passion like I would defending Luke Skywalker or something. Sure. But I will say two things about it. A movie has a head, or not a head. A movie has a heart and a body. And The Last Jedi is a good example of a movie that had a beautiful body. It was a wonderfully shot film. I didn't think Star Wars could look so perfect and artistic, but it had a rotten soul, had a bad heart.
Yes.
The movie had a bad message for its audience, and it didn't say anything positive about Star Wars fans and what that movie and that franchise is about. This Superman movie by James Gunn also has an ugly body, okay? It is horrible to look at, nasty CGI. I felt like I was back in the middle of the 2000s, and every single action sequence looked like it was a CGI cutscene from a video game, like a Mortal Kombat thing. It was really horrible. I almost wanted to walk out of the movie because I felt insulted by the visuals. But I do not think this movie had a corrupt heart. I think it actually had something beautiful to say about Superman, humanity, and the Kent family. And as a Kent myself, I feel like I have some extra standing.
So I understand where you're going with this. And I think that part of the reason that you could make that argument is to say that this is a version of Superman that is supposed to reinvigorate his appeal to kids and families instead of the kind of dark version coming out
the
of
Christopher Nolan era is maybe over.
Exactly. And I think that there's definitely something to that, and I think that that's intentional. From my perspective, though, I feel like there's certain aspects of Superman that I think of as fundamental to him that I felt like were either absent from this movie or that the movie subverted. And you made the Last Jedi comparison.
Yeah.
Certainly the treatment of his parents, his Kryptonian parents in the movie is a subversion. And I think that we can talk about it now.
This is such a meta approach to Superman. And as a millennial who grew up on Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Z is a Japanese anime. Toriyama has mentioned that there are overtones and inspirations of the Superman story in the Dragon Ball Z story, where this guy named Goku is sent down, well, actually he was called Kakarot, when he was sent to planet Earth to destroy it as a baby. Instead, he was raised by someone good, named him Goku, and he becomes a hero. And in that series, his brother comes and reminds him, hey, we sent you here to destroy this place, and you have done nothing but save it. This is something that James Gunn then took to Superman. So Superman inspires Dragon Ball Z, and then Dragon Ball Z inspires a reboot of Superman in its own image. It's very, very meta. And I don't think James Gunn has the right to do this to Superman. I don't think that you have the right to retcon something so specific about Superman's origins, which is that Jor-El sent him here as Kal-El to save us and to make us better people, but also that they thought we were worth saving and that we could be a people who reaches for the stars and improve. I just don't think Hollywood liberals, and it's always liberals who think that they have the right to do this, can just change that so fundamentally. But you're wrong about the Kents.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the Kents, but I just want to make one more additional point, which is that this whole aspect of sending the superpowered being to rule over us or destroy us, or to in the context of the boys he's created, in the context of Invincible he's sent, and so it's one of these things where it's like, why you can't just do that to Superman. You can't turn him into, like, you were meant to be Omni-Man. You were meant to be somebody who ruled over us and repopulated. Like, even that aspect. I mean, I joked that he was sent here to essentially frack the earth. But the thing that I think is about the Kents, where we're going to have disagreement here, is my impression of them in the movie, and feel free to obviously disagree, but my impression of them in the movie is as of kind of schlubs, that they are, that they're not people who, the way that they talk about, even the fact that they use the word box instead of television, the fact that the stuff that's on their farm is rusted out, that they have like 3 cows, that kind of thing. I view the Kents is so important because I think of Pa Kent as being the equivalent of someone like Hank Hill, which is like the solid like pillar of the community person who takes care of their stuff, you know, runs the shop class, you know, is kind of, you know, it's in that vein of like being raised by a uniquely upright American father, you know, here gives a different vision from Clark. Whereas in this one, it just felt like they were just
one of the things that
Midwesterners.
One of the things that gets said often about the Kents, and I think you might have used this language as well, salt of the earth,
yes,
good people. And I actually resent a little bit the fact that salt of the earth, good people with, you know, good virtues and heart, that means that they have to look like Kevin Costner, be a movie star kind of personality.
I don't
incredibly articulate.
I don't think you need to be Kevin Costner.
He could run for mayor and be elected to the town. But what we get in the Kents, and it's very short, we don't get much of Pa and Ma Kent in James Gunn's movie, are what you described, which is that they actually look more like rural people in the middle of nowhere.
That is fair.
We're balding, a little bit overweight, thick accents. We don't have a huge and successful farm like the Yellowstone Ranch. We have 3 cows and a very simple lifestyle. And yet we are still good people who don't preach resentment, entitlement. And I don't think, Ben, that you have evidence for the claim that Pa Kent is sort of a live your truth, do what feels good kind of father. There was no dialogue for that.
Well, I felt like there was. I felt like his statement to Clark, just in terms of trying to encourage him, was basically just a be yourself type of thing. And you know, basically forgive yourself for your foibles is, I think, what they were trying to go to in that scene. And obviously, you know, he addresses that himself in the movie. I've never heard Superman call himself a jerk before.
The self-loathing element of Superman in this is interesting, and I think it is sort of that self-critical culture where we're all goofballs, and, you know, everybody thinks poorly of themselves. But what Pa Kent says to him, and I'm sitting in the movie and I'm waiting for the shoe to drop on the anti-fathers, you know, progressive message, and he says, "It's not a parent's job to tell their kid who they're supposed to be. We're here to give you the tools so you can make fools of yourself." And then he says, "Your choices, Clark, your actions, that's what makes you who you are." How is that not true?
Well, but see, I think that aspect of it is not intended to say, it's the opposite of the message that we get to Spider-Man. Okay. It's the opposite of with great power comes great responsibility. Okay. It is essentially, we give you the tools and then you have to make your own decisions. And from my perspective, that lack of kind of inspiration toward obligation to the planet is, again, something that kind of goes back to the, like, I mean, is this Dr. Manhattan who can just like disappear and go off and like live on the moon for the next month, you know, and that kind of thing, just because he doesn't want to be around people anymore? I
think Pa Kent would be ashamed of those actions, you know, and this is kind of where we get to the meta conversation around these movies. Is I 100% agree that Hollywood is waging a war on traditional virtue, the family, fathers, male role models, and the message of do what feels good, live your truth, go find yourself is not a positive message. We do not need more individuals in this country. We actually need more people who think of themselves as owing something to other people. But it is absolutely true that in the context of this story, where he was sent here to destroy us by wicked parents, he has a choice to make, and he's going to be defined not by where he came from, by what he chooses to do. And the fact that this movie ends with him sitting in a chair and surrounding himself with family videos of Ma and Pa Kent, a stable, healthy, encouraging family, says to me that this movie is going, you will never find a more safe place where you are loved and recognized as you will at home. And that's the opposite of what the lefties want to tell you.
that is a fair point of pushback. A couple of other questions. First off, casting Alan Tudyk as a robot is just like, is this like the thing that he's just going to do for the rest of his life?
This is his new career. Yeah.
And I don't think Gunn did it as good, I will say. I don't think that this is as much of a mark. What were, in terms of your favorite aspects and least favorite aspects of the movie. What really stuck out to you?
So I think maybe let's put aside the familial stuff and talk about something else. It would be, I liked Lex Luthor's motivation. So there was a lot about Lex Luthor that I found to be overdone, a little bit cartoonish, but we are in a comic book world here. I liked that he was motivated by feeling small. That's sort of in this sense that men are always trying to become gods, and that they think their accomplishments and their money and their scientific exploration are going to make them kings of the universe, that then someone can come down and just by virtue of their existence make them feel insignificant, that he doesn't care about the money. And I'm so sick of these lazy anti-capitalist stories where everything is always about the greed of the wealthy. That is not what motivates this guy at all. It's actually something, more akin to that hideous strength. He's motivated by something much more sinister. What I hated about this movie had to have been the comic book style pacing of it, in which he releases the video, the actual origin of Superman, and immediately the crowd just turns, angry and throwing stones. And, we hate you, Superman.
They were throwing stuff at him almost immediately.
And the news footage immediately switches to Superman's a bad guy. It's like, oh my God, like the world does not move this fast and people are not this stupid.
He milkshake duck Superman.
It was just a very silly movie, and I walked away feeling like this was in fact for 13-year-olds, and in a way that's positive. Like, I don't think we need more movies for elder millennials to argue about their childhoods. We actually need a movie that is targeted at children and makes them happy and teaches them something. So I know I always want to have it both ways on these things, but I think that's probably my negative.
Why does James Gunn lean on animals so much?
I have no idea. So you know more about James Gunn than I do, but that was a huge part of that movie.
Everybody had a freaking animal. He literally saves a squirrel at one point. You know, it's like, and that's a squirrel. I mean, come on.
Hold on, mate. We are made in the image of God to care for all the animals. And so there was this part of this movie that actually stripped out because of the change in his origin story, that stripped out very much like the Christian undertones of Superman. So we don't have in James Gunn's Superman is like this Christ-like figure who was sent down to show us the way and teach us how to become better ourselves. But we do at least have the idea that what we do to the smallest among us matters a whole lot. And I'm a C.S. Lewis junkie. I know you are as well. I mean, if C.S. Lewis cared about one thing more than the soul of human beings, it was stopping animal experimentation and vivisection. Because he thought that the ultimate corrupting influence on human beings in the 1930s and 40s is what we were doing to animals in labs, because then we were going to one day do it to ourselves. It's these little things. Saving the squirrel matters.
All right. Okay. Again, it's a different story. I would just say my argument is it's a different story. It's a different superhero. He's, James Harriet man, or something like that. So I want to talk to you about a couple of other things. I know that you have some opinions about what's been going on, and I talked earlier in my monologue about Stephen Colbert and everything related to that. But what's going on with this Paramount merger and the ways that it's going to affect streaming and everything related to that? I know that you monitor it in Hollywood from the perspective not just of nerd content, but other things as well. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
At the Consumer Choice Center, we care a lot about abundance and opportunity for a bunch of different streaming platforms and entertainment and all that kind of stuff. And Paramount is struggling. I mean, this is a streaming platform and a legacy media company that is absolutely buried in debt and in need of a cash transfusion, and they are getting that from Skydance, aka Tom Cruise Inc. I don't know for people who don't know this about Skydance. I mean, they have behind them Mission Impossible, Top Gun, Jack Reacher. So I don't know what that relationship is about, but they could use a little dose of Tom Cruise on their platforms, and they need more creative energy to go along with their legacy properties. Paramount cannot live on the Taylor Sheridan universe forever, though that is the best thing going on on there today. It is certainly not anything that goes on CBS or the Stephen Colbert show, which is absolutely draining them of capital, close to $40 million every single year. It's an embarrassment.
I think that one of the other things that's interesting about this, and you mentioned Sheridan, is that the problem I think for Paramount has been that that a lot of the things that they depended on is past content and stuff that is not
SpongeBob.
New. Exactly, and they just did this deal. Thankfully, working it out with the South Park guys. Congratulations to Matt and Trey for $1.5 billion or whatever it is over 5 years, and a lot of that is just to be able to keep running South Park.
Yeah.
The fact is that they've depended on this library as opposed to being able to really make.
Isn't that a sign of the
content.
times, this dependence on everything that came before us? Nobody is making new original things to inspire the next generation. It's all about saving SpongeBob, reviving Avatar: The Last Airbender. we got to keep everything old alive.
The new Peppa Pig child is brought to you by BlackRock. Okay. No, I'm not kidding.
Peppa Pig is going to buy all the single-family homes in America.
Exactly. Peppa Pig invading us. So I also wanted to ask you about the state of affairs as it relates to Star Wars. And obviously you write a great deal about this. You wrote a book about it. And I want to just ask, after we seem to be in a moment of reset post Andor, Tony Gilroy goes out, gets all these critical plaudits. He does this huge podcast tour. And he thinks, and everyone he talks to, he has a good conversation with, except it seems Ross Douthat, who he had strong disagreements with.
Why do you support fascism? I mean, why are you so offended by? Do you identify with the Empire? Literally every time, if you actually asked him or pushed back on the leftist messaging a little bit at the heart of Star Wars, he goes, "I mean, do you identify with the Empire?" And I think that's actually part and parcel of how most liberals in Hollywood think.
Yeah. So what's the state of affairs now with Star Wars? What's coming up and what are you looking forward to? Where are we going?
Yeah, so I wish I had something prophetic to offer. I think that they are at a turning point, and they are also at a juncture where they're going to change leadership here very soon. Kathleen Kennedy, despite rumors saying that she was going to leave last year, she is actually on her way out, and we're going to find out who runs things. I do want to see Dave Filoni, the true heir of George Lucas, in spirit, take over Star Wars. People will say that Dave Filoni is a little bit of a cheap storyteller, that he likes to do things that are a little bit more kid-friendly. But I actually think that this is what Star Wars still needs to strive for. Ahsoka Season 2 is on the way and in production, which I think was one of the best stories that Star Wars has told in many, many years, with the exception of Andor. But I am in a minority faction on that.
Yeah, but I think that Clone Wars fans would agree with you on that, and I think that there's a lot of anticipation for it, and part of that too, I think, is just there's a generational reset. It feels like going on here with Star Wars. I mean, moving away from someone, it's not whatever you thought of Kathleen Kennedy. I think a big part of it is that, unlike a lot of us and a lot of the people who are now working on Star Wars, if you predate the movies, then you didn't grow up as a fan, sort of surrounded by it, and the equivalent of someone like Filoni, who did, and even though he's a little older than us, is someone who is certainly capable of viewing it that way. Do you think that we're going to move to a point where Star Wars is more about good storytelling, which I thought Andor really had at its heart, versus fan service, which it just seems like it has been the problem with a lot of the different products that they've put out, in the same way that it became a problem for the MCU, of just like callbacks and fan service and things that required you to watch every show.
I will say that the best way to tell great stories sometimes does collide with fan service. The fans of Star Wars who have dedicated way too much mental real estate to this thing since they were children, myself included, we actually do know and demonstrate something about what is great in Star Wars. And there is a lot of talk right now that there is going to be a reviving of a lot of the expanded universe that was chucked out when Disney initially took over. And you've already seen them do this by bringing in characters such as Grand Admiral Thrawn, just sort of this sacred cow of people who read the Star Wars novels in the 90s and early 2000s, back into the Ahsoka series. They are going to draw on those stories for meaning, and fans do know what is working with Star Wars. So all they got to do is listen.
Okay.
All they got to do is tell a story that we've demonstrated that we want, which might be the Darth Plagueis origin story and not whatever the Acolyte was.
The last question, are we going to get a Knights of the Old Republic movie at some point?
I don't think that Hollywood has enough original ideas to go without the Knights of the Old Republic.
Yep.
They will have to tap into it and probably ruin it.
Okay, so canon-wise, this is the question to you.
Darth Revan is important to me.
Okay.
May I say, and I hope we're not up against time, Darth Revan and the problem with Knights of the Old Republic and the problem with video game adaptations is your experience is different from the other person who plays that game. Yeah. Everybody has headcanon about who Darth Revan or any character in a video game is, including like Red Dead Redemption. My character is different than yours.
Yes, exactly. Well, your character's definitely different than mine, because when I played Knights of the Old Republic, I made the Wookiee kill the Twi'lek.
You're a sick man, Ben Dominant.
Stephen Kent is on Twitter at Stephen Kent X. He is the founder of Geeky Stoics, which you should check out and subscribe to on Substack, and media relations for the Consumer Choice Center. Stephen, thank you so much for joining the Big Ben Show today.
Thanks, Ben.
There's one thing I want to say before I get out of here, and this is a dumb joke. You guys aren't going to like it, but it's just a Norm Macdonald joke that I loved when he hosted the ESPYs, and I'm going to do it now. Travis Hunter won the Heisman Trophy this year. He's the first defensive player since Charles Woodson to win the Heisman. Congratulations, Travis Hunter, winning the Heisman. That's something they can never take away from you, unless you kill your wife and a waiter, in which case they can take that away from you.
Shane Gillis, the great one, hosting it for the Dogs at the ESPYs. Dylan is in the audio room. What was your reaction to his performance?
Oh my gosh. It's such a breath of fresh air to hear actual comedy.
Yeah.
Like good jokes from an actual comedian who's at the peak of his career in one of these hosting spots.
Well, I certainly think the choice of Gillis to host the ESPYs is intentional and is also obviously meant for him to help out a brand that has struggled with wokeness, just as he's helped out Bud Light, and it seems like he's the go-to guy for that kind of thing. But I do think that there's something telling about seeing that happen the same week that Stephen Colbert gets canceled.
Yeah.
Like, this is the opposite. Okay, this is someone who immediately starts making fun of the people who are there. Mm-hmm. He has a joke about SGA. He has a joke about the people pretending to watch WNBA. He's immediately going after the audience, and it's actually very funny to watch on the ESPYs because they're not athletes who are used to being joked about, especially not to their faces.
Yeah,
that's why Norm's routine was a classic, and that's why Shane's was too. Great to see. But then, of course, he got backlash for it from the normal sorts of people. Cut 15.
To the next point, dude, The View.
I wish I was watching The View. I know we're having fun right now.
I just wish John
I was
Hamm
watching The View so that I could understand comedy the way Joy Behar does. You know, hilarious comedian Joy Behar? What was that one joke she told that everyone likes? Never once, ever? But no, I get it. They didn't like it. It wasn't for them. If they liked it, I would have been like, oh, that sucked.
Yeah, that would have been weird.
You are Whoopi, dude.
It's literally not for the ladies of The View. Like, literally.
It's specifically designed for them to go, I didn't like it.
And that's part of what made it so funny, which is what I think we need to get back to when it comes to late night generally. And it's why these places need to be hiring these younger comedians who don't all sound the same and have the same politics.
100%.
You've been listening to another edition of The Big Ben Show. Email us, as always, at bigben@fox.com. We'll be back next week with more to dive back into the fray.